Welcome to our 12th Annual Arts Front and Center Forum. I'm Penny Wallin, Executive Director of MAAE and the host of the Mississippi's Imagination Conversation, sponsored by the Lincoln Center Institute. This event is one of the 50 Imagination Conversations in 50 states, which will culminate in the Imagination Summit this summer in New York. The cornucopia of ideas and possibilities from our discussion this afternoon will be synthesized and celebrated in order to create an action plan for making the cultivation of imaginative thinking an integral part of education in our schools. Thank you for being a part of this event today. I would like to introduce Susan Garrard, Executive Director of this museum, for an official welcome.
When I saw your question today, what role can imagination play in Mississippi? We here at the museum would say dream it, build it, and get ready. It's an exciting thing, we think, to have children's imaginations be part of the conversation here at your meeting today. Children here have an opportunity to sing, to dance, to draw, to paint, to stage theatrical exhibitions of their own, to read, to write books, to write stories, and we hope you'll do some of that this afternoon later when you get a tour through the museum. So, welcome to the place that imagination built. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We've brought together today an array of Mississippi leaders with impressive success stories to discuss imagination. Betsy Bradley serves as director of the Mississippi Museum of Art. She's a grant writer, a community event organizer, an artist, a business leader, an activist, a visionary, and a friend to many of us. It is my pleasure to welcome Betsy Bradley, who will lead Mississippi's Imagination Conversation.
I'd like to invite the panelists to come up and have a seat. We have some amazing people here to talk about how important imagination is in their lives and their work, and the possibility it holds for changing society. We just want to start by talking a little bit about imagination itself. Imagination as the capacity to envision something that you've never seen before, something that has not existed before. Its application in the creativity around us, in the creativity expressed in classrooms and studios and offices and office buildings around the world. And then what that could mean for innovation and change in our world. But let's start with the most obvious thing that brings everybody here, and that is your work life. Why is it important for someone who is out there trying to lead a community, trying to get the pipes fixed and the plumbing working and the power on and the school system to stay in business, and to get city council to all vote for the same thing? Why does imagination factor into what you do, Mayor Dupree?
Imagination plays and has played a significant role in my life. You have to understand, someone who grew up in a single-parent household that had rocks that you used for toys and boxes that you used for toys and rolling tires down the street. You had to imagine all these things that you were capable of doing. And I did that because I sold newspapers at 8 years old. So I imagined all these things that would come to my life simply by throwing newspapers and seeing what other people were doing in their lives. And then when I go home to my house, all the things that they had, I did not have. And so imagination had to play a role in my life for me to be where I am. And so when I first ran for mayor, when I sat down in front of the editorial board, the first thing they asked me, when I told them what I wanted to do, they said, "You have lofty goals." I took that as a badge of honor, because when somebody tells you that lofty goals, that means you're thinking outside the box. That's what I think. And that's what imagination is. It's the ability to think and see things. The Bible even talks about it. Things that you can't even imagine. And that's what we do hopefully with city council and even with people out there in the community. When they see you doing things that they didn't imagine that you could do, they have faith and confidence in you. When you see the council seeing you doing things that they didn't imagine that you could do, and even thought you couldn't do it, but you end up doing it, it just builds confidence. Builds confidence in your fellow co-workers, builds confidence in the people you represent. And that's what imagination is all about. It even builds confidence in yourself. When you find yourself doing some things that you didn't think you didn't do yourself. Sometimes I step back and say, wow, did I do that? That's what we're going to joke to. Okay, Nicole, they don't get it up. But that's how imagination plays. Tough group. Y'all never heard of Urkel? Yeah, I guess you did get the wine. Never heard of Urkel? Did I do that? Okay, I'm through. But that's the way imagination, I think, plays a role in all of our lives. It allows us to know that we can do things that we didn't even know we could do. Like Nicole. God bless you. Wonderful story.
Thank you. Well, let's go right to from the political to the artists themselves. What's it like to live in a world of imagination all the time? And why do you do that?
Well, it's exhausting. I suppose everything we do is really sort of driven in some way by imagination. I mean, we sort of laughed that even the origin of our partnership was kind of like the Big Bang. It happened all of a sudden, and we've just been expanding and growing ever since. But we realized we took a big risk right at the beginning. We lived at different continents. We were really passionate about the same things, and then we didn't ever see boundaries. We just saw possibilities and decided, well, let's come together and do it, pursue these dreams that we have. And but I think there's the abstract sense of all is dreaming. We are coming up with lots of ideas, but we go very quickly from now let's make it a reality. I think our practice, we've become very skilled at taking an idea, testing it out, very quickly, and then developing it.
Sure. First of all, Nicole, what a story, and I wish you the best. And I think it's very inspiring, and I wish you really the best. I think it's very tiring. First of all, we live constantly and we sleep constantly with the sense of mental image, concepts, sense of intuition. I believe we are lucky, first of all, to find each other, 60,000 kilometers and we find each other. That's amazing. And I think we really try to be ourselves, first of all. We live really in times who are unique for human being, technology, innovation, and really the possibility for the future generations to really be extremely creative and use all these mediums really to express themselves. I think it's a unique time to live, and we, both of us, try to really use them and to reflect our thoughts, our experience in the environment, and really, most important, I believe, it's really not only our imagination, but give the possibility for the public to imagine, give the possibility for them to experience. And it's not about what we do anymore, because our work, it's almost a reflection of our thoughts, but it's not belong to us anymore. And I think that's the beauty of any creation we can really experience. And I don't know, I'm really happy to meet Erin. I think the emotion side and the passion too, and I think we are very passionate about each other, I suppose, and very passionate what we do. And I think all these factors, and see the story of Nicole too, and are extremely important to keep going and believe in our beliefs and believe really things can change, and can change in the amazing and in a very imaginative way, I suppose.
Thank you. And it's very interesting that you're talking about keeping things going, and the fact that imagination may start as a kind of abstract concept, but it's when it turns into something concrete that it takes on a life of its own. And I think, Melissa, one of the challenges, Mayor Dupree talked about imagining new realities builds confidence. I think one of the issues that Mississippians have always had in talking about their home state is some kind of inferiority complex, that we don't stack up to other places or other cultures or other economies. And you are in the position of selling this state to the rest of the world. So talk a little bit about how creativity and imagination is a part of that, and if it does build confidence among your audience.
This is a great topic. I'm glad you asked that question. You would think, particularly in the business world and in the environment in which I work, that it would be very dry, and it is. It is. When you get right down to the nuts and bolts of economic development, of recruiting, business, industry to the state or to communities, what we have to offer, what the state of Mississippi has to offer, is very similar to most places in America or in the world. We have land, we have buildings, we have communities. Every place has at least one or two communities that has a nice quality of life, that has a beautiful vista to show people that make decisions about these things. And so the challenge in what we do at the Mississippi Development Authority and what we've done to try to sell the state of Mississippi is to find what makes us different. What can we wrap our arms around that when all other things are equal, it makes Mississippi rise to the top? And many people think that may be incentives, and that's not the case. We are a very I don't want to say a poor state, but we don't have a huge budget. We cannot, the money factor doesn't really fit in the whole plan to be able to get projects here. It is incumbent on us to use our imagination, to be innovative, to find ways to set us apart from other states. And we have found that what has made Mississippi stand out is the creativity of the state. It is our culture. It's this culture of imagination, that we see very clearly in our arts, that we see very clearly in our music, in some of the activities of that type, but it also imbues what we do in business. Walking into any situation with the idea of, regardless of what the objections are, we're going to imagine, we're going to find solutions. We're going to find ways to get around no. We're going to find ways to make a winning proposition for everyone involved. And truly, in speaking with businesses that we've worked with, trying to get their feedback on what drew them here, what made them choose Mississippi over another location, inevitably it came back to two things: Mississippi's workforce and the way that they approach their jobs, and our creativity in the way we approach dealing with that business entity. And we've also made that commitment to dealing with our businesses within the state that are the backbone of our economy, to continue to be creative and innovative in working with them and helping them grow, helping them become more successful.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you talked about the workforce, because all the people in this room are people who care about creating the next workforce, and obviously it's important that we do a good job with that. So, Dr. House, talk a little bit about the way that imagination is important in the education or the curriculum and your work. I mean, I have to say that you're doing the work of creating the next generation of children, but I'm sure there are times when it doesn't feel like an imaginative exercise being at the State Department of Education. So, is it important for you to use your imagination, and what about the impact it can have on the children?
Thank you, Betsy. I think that imagination, as so many of the other folks on the panel have mentioned, is critical just to our daily existence. The whole notion of relevance and rigor that really spurs young people to be willing to go the extra mile, that helps them have the resilience that Nicole had. It's so critical, can certainly be part and should be part of what we do in the school. My work on a daily basis is not necessarily as creative and innovative and imaginative as I would wish, but just as has also been mentioned, every single day we have to solve problems. And the more we're able to see those possibilities and create in our own minds what that picture would look like, given a different set of circumstances, given the ability to push ourselves, I think the better we can all be. But our classrooms, beginning with the babies, have to truly be environments that nurture and really allow imagination to take hold, take shape, and grow. Looking at kindergarten children when they come to us, they're all very imaginative. That's that screaming and hollering and carrying on we hear out in the hall. They love life, they love learning, they love books, they love rocks, they love everything. And so I think our task is to create an environment that doesn't undo that. Unfortunately, we sometimes find ways to sort of squash all of those creative juices that are flowing through those minds and bodies. And so helping expand rather than to hold back the notion of what it looks like to use your imagination to grow and flourish is terribly important from our perspective. Although I also think it's important for our teachers. One of the things that I sometimes lament is that with the emphasis we have on assessment, sometimes the beauty and the joy of learning gets lost in our classrooms. And I see some of you going, yes. If I had my way, we'd do all of that, but we have a federal government that gives us money, and we have to meet federal requirements. But helping teachers and principals and superintendents and school boards see the importance of fostering that creative, joyful, mind-expanding learning experiences is part of what we talk about every single day. It's just how do you bring that to scale from the State Department of Education down through our classrooms. And if I may also add, teacher preparation programs, which is part of my background, are also critically important in this dialogue. If we can't help those teacher educators understand what they do as they prepare new teachers, so that those folks can then go out and say, it is okay for your students to color outside the lines. It is okay for your students to have purple horses and polka dotted horses and yellow horses and bluegrass and all those other things that we sometimes squash again. Then we can start really creating the generation of teachers that are doing more than they're doing right now. And I hope I came close to answering your question.
Well, Philip, you are with the children. I mean, you are right there. You're not just thinking about the children. You are with them on a daily basis. So talk a little bit about, obviously you deal with children who come from places where their imaginations have been encouraged and from places where it's probably been squashed as well. So how do you help children find their best imaginative self?
The panel and Mayor, distinguished guests, it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor to talk about what the possibilities are for our youth today. We work with Boy Scouts. We work with not just Boy Scouts, but also families and the entire picture. One of the things that happens with a young person is the fact that if we can put character into a young boy, that young boy can then grow to become somebody like the mayor, governor, president, and so forth. So the imagination starts very little. On the other hand, we cannot afford not to invest in our youth, because if you think about it, look at all the communities in which our crime rates or our education levels are low. It all starts with how much care and love do we put into our youth. So, one of the things we decided to do is that it's not enough to just be comfortable with the same models, the same old model of education. We have to expand, we have to grow. This year, for example, we've started a new model of education within our scouting program, which we're going to roll out in the fall. And what we've done is we've done this. We realize today that the average family has a cell phone. Most of us have a cell phone. The average family may or may not have a computer, may or may not be able to use a computer. But we cannot deny the fact that we have to put our children in a place where we can compete, creating more yeses than nos. So what we've done is we decided, as a new thing this year, we've combined with McGraw-Hill, so there's a lot of higher ed education, but we've asked them to come down to our level, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. We've communicated with CBS, with a few cell phone companies, and we're going to put together a model education in which, as a parent, I can go home, I can take my cell phone, I can put my cell phone against the TV screen or a website, I can get a lesson plan. I can then study the lesson plan, go to the comprehension elements, take a test, put a test back through the cell phone, and within 5 to 10 minutes get results so I know, okay, if I'm not doing well in math, this is where I need to improve. In other words, if you think about it, today our children have 7 different ways of watching Jersey Shore. That does nothing for our future. However, if we can use the technologies we have today, cell phones, computers, television, what have you, and use it to expand the knowledge, whether it be in a scout meeting, whether it be in a classroom, and realize that there are 5 different ways of reading a book. And there are 5 different ways of understanding how we can comprehend what we're reading, so that tomorrow, when I take that ACT, I'm not just going to pass ACT, but I'm going because my dream is beyond. And so, one of the things we try to do in scouting is we try to tell young children that you can conquer the world, but it starts by building blocks, by realizing that what you do every day counts, that character comes from within, and if you build yourself with strong character, starts with you, you can then, the young boys can become husbands, proud husbands, good husbands for our families, and that we can provide a universe in which everybody realizes that we are a part of it. We all have a piece in the pie. Thank you.
All right, now, I guess we're talking about divergent thinking, Dr. House. Malcolm, you tell me a little bit about the role of imagination at the level of community life, because you see all these communities all over the state who are very involved in the recovery of the Gulf Coast after Katrina. How did it matter, or how does it matter, and how can you tell if a community has imagination or not?
Community is really important. Sense of place is really important. You know, where you come from, who you are, who you people are, really important stuff. Our role at the Arts Commission is really to empower people to consider the possibilities of what they can be, to understand who they are to start with. I mean, many communities literally don't know who they are. They have not really done an asset development search. They haven't really explored what the story of their community is and what their assets are and what their strong points and weak points are. But in a way, community is everything, and whether it's a church community, a school community, a community of peers, a book club, or you know, the place where you live and call home, it's really important to, in my view, to sort of embrace and encourage creativity and innovation in community life. Successful communities are innovative. Successful communities have great assets culturally. They have great offerings. People are entertainment, great education. All the things that if you could make a list of where you want to live, successful communities have that. And a lot of times, you know, it's about introducing the idea of what are possibilities. I mean, how could Fondren go from sort of a tired, worn out, sort of tired community in Jackson to this new, vibrant, sort of hip, you know, culturally cool place. And it's about, you know, this imagination, creativity, thinking outside the box, being artistic. And so, you know, at the Arts Commission, we think a lot about how to empower Mississippi's creative spirit. We think a lot about how to integrate creativity and invention and innovation into economic development that Melissa and I work on, into the schools, into the K-12 schools that I work on with Dr. House, into early learning, preschool, pre-K, with a lot of the community colleges in the state, and then pre-service with the universities, community colleges, and on into community learning, where we work with communities to celebrate their story, to tell their story, to imagine the possibilities of what a community can be. A great example of that is, where was Clarksdale 10 years ago, and where's Clarksdale today? They made one decision. They decided to embrace their culture, which was music. They said, we're going to be a community based in the tradition of Mississippi's great blues tradition, and we're going to celebrate in a very creative way small town in the Mississippi Delta that birthed music, now known as blues, which is also known as America's music. So that's a great example of how something like that works. And so, you know, there are many strategies, whether it's workforce development, whether it's economic development, whether it's arts education or bringing the arts back into education, working with very young children in early childhood, working in the community, the broader community of libraries, festivals, playgrounds, the faith-based. There's just a million opportunities to introduce, support, and be a part of innovation and imagination. And that's one of the things that we preach, we talk about, we sort of demonstrate. And I'll say this in wrapping this up. I heard Governor Barber say the other day that one of the real problems that we have here in Mississippi is that we have marginalized workforce, that we somehow have made, you know, graduating from high school and going to a community college something less than, that somehow we don't honor the nurse practitioner, somehow we don't honor the mechanic, somehow we don't want to honor you know, that person who's made a choice to go to work rather than to go to college. And I think that we have to find innovative ways to encourage people to join the workforce in an innovative way, to be competitive in the 21st century, and not to be sort of feel like a second citizen about this. I think we really, in Mississippi, we've got this great opportunity to say that a lot of our workforce do not necessarily become mayors. A lot of our workforce do not become artists. A lot of our workforce do not graduate from four-year institutions of higher learning. A lot of our workforce go to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need to honor that. We need to find ways to help them be creative workers, to be creative taxpayers, to be engaged in the community process, to be a part of community life. And I think it's a great opportunity that we have.
Nicole, you've told us a great story, an amazing journey, and a big part of it for you was getting your body back in shape, getting your muscles back to something that you could control, working that. And we all are aware of what it takes to keep our physical bodies in shape. Some of us do it better than others. But nevertheless, I'm wondering about how you keep your imagination strong and in shape. Do you have to work at that, or is that a natural way of life for you?
Of course it's natural, come on now. No, you have to think too, I was told from day one that
getting back to square one was going to take forever and then some. And honest to God, I chose not to believe that. Maybe it was a bad thing, maybe it was bad to think that way, but just, I decided not to because I knew the capability of myself prior to my accident, and I knew that, well, if I just have that mentality now, then I'm A-okay. But again, I go back to, it is much easier said than done. It's much, much easier said than done. But the thing about it was, this was a major accident that happened to me. I was going to stop my imagination ball from rolling. My imagination kind of flourished after that because I thought to myself, well, you know, they say I can't do this and they say I can't do that, but I bet if I believe it, then I can do it. Now, again, this has been a long, long process and things are still kind of waking up slowly, but they're waking up because I told myself that eventually they will. And again, maybe that may not work for everybody in here, but since we're talking about the topic of imagination, again, we're all here for the same reason. We're all here because our imaginations are as big as they are, hence why we're at the Children's Museum, because it's a wonderful venue for imagination. You can't let it stop you in your tracks when you hit roadblocks. We all hit roadblocks. I had a huge roadblock, but instead of like just stopping my car, I decided, well, I had a roadblock, but I know there's a detour somewhere. So I kind of went with that notion. It's like, well, I'll just find the detour. Now, it's probably going to take a minute to get back on my highway, but eventually my car will get back there. So I'd say right now I'm still on the country roads, but the highway is looking very, very prominent in my future.
Sure is.
Any of you, when you need to get your imagination going again or get some inspiration, what do you do?
Karaoke.
Karaoke. Anybody?
I garden in the summer. Just digging in the dirt gives me a chance to just block out everything else and just think, just think. And then the rest of the time, because I do so much traveling with my job, and a lot of it is driving, being in the car by yourself, turn your phone off, that is the best time in the world to just think, to meditate, to pray, to do whatever, sing to yourself. But it really allows your imagination to run wild. And one thing that occurred to me is imagination, or being imaginative, isn't an activity, it's a practice. It's not something we should grow out of. I was on my way home from work day before yesterday, and I live out past the Chapel of the Cross, and if anybody's familiar with that area, across from the chapel is a beautiful pasture, and there's some little cows out there. Well, there was a calf, a baby cow, and it was just running in the fields and jumping around. I had my Bluetooth on, I was talking to my brother, and I said, there's a little calf in the field frolicking around, and he laughed at me, and he said, frolicking? I've never, I've read that word, but I've never heard somebody use it in a sentence. And so I asked him, so how old were you when you stopped frolicking? Because all of us, when we were kids, we frolicked. There's probably a whole mess of kids down there right now frolicking their heads off. But usually, as we grow to be adults, right about the time we stop frolicking, we also stop imagining. And if we can get back to a point every once in a while that you'll allow yourself to frolic, even if it's just mentally, that's waking up those creative juices and allowing yourself to imagine.
That's wonderful. So, Dr. House, how do we create a system that encourages our children to continue to frolic?
I think we do just exactly what Melissa says. When I was a principal, I had these hot pink tennis shoes. Just the brightest $2 tennis shoes I could find. And I think that's about what I paid for them. And I made a point every day at the beginning of the day when the buses were coming in, during lunch, at the multiple recesses. I had about 1,000 kids in my school. And at the end of the day, to put the pink tennis shoes on. And I did it for a lot of reasons. One, my feet hurt. But I also did it because I wanted to remind everyone, our custodians, our cafeteria workers, our children, our teachers, our secretaries, that was a place of joy and play, and that was an integral part of learning. So I think Melissa's right. We have to keep reminding ourselves that this is what human beings do.